Hello folks, R1 here. We're going to run an arcade battle on the Corellia map in the M4A3 mounted with the 105mm howitzer. I'm going to roll with just straight high explosive anti-tank ammunition. High explosive ammunition has been toned down a little bit in this tank, but it's still very effective, but I wanted to see how it would do with just the heat ammunition on board. And this video is also as much about the map and the way spawn points have been handled lately as it is about the tank itself. At this point, I hadn't yet realized that the only viable spawn endpoint for the enemy team was on the opposite corner of the map. I have seen people spawn in at the supposedly not allowed spawn points if they click in quick enough, so I hesitate for a minute and just wait and see if anyone pops out there, but apparently everyone's going to the correct spawn-in location by default. And this is going to change the dynamic of how this map is played. You'll notice there's only one capture point, the A capture point, and it is in a relatively neutral corner of the map. Now we are blessed spawning in on the side of the map that we did, and with having a very direct and very speedy route to that spawn point. You can see the people that went the low road, so to speak, are there already, although I think I entered this match a little bit on the late side. I believe it's a little bit quicker and easier for our side, our corner of the map, to get to the capture point when it's in that particular location. I have chosen to go to the high ground on the map, however, in the center, and although there's no capture point up here, it gives me an excellent field of view and kill zone, as the enemy team has to cross directly beneath me to threaten the capture point. If we can control the high ground, we can also control direct access to the capture point of the enemy team. Lately, you have probably noticed in ground forces battles that the capture points and spawn points have been different than they have been in the past. And I think for the most part this has been a good thing. It does spice things up, and I do like the push maps where the spawn points and capture points actually move in relationship to each other, so that as you take the capture point, it respawns again further back, closer to the enemy's point of origin, simulating the shifting lines of battle and supply lines in an actual combat. I think that's kind of interesting if you realize that's what's going on. Sometimes you'll have maps like this, where the capture point is in an odd corner of the map, and terrain figures greatly into what team is likely to get there first. Now, I'm sure they're still playing around with the location of these various spawn points in new locations to see what works out to be the most interesting gameplay. I don't necessarily feel that it is strictly necessary for both teams to have an equal chance of getting to the spawn point at the same time. I think that some battles are much more interesting if one team is predisposed toward defending and one team is tasked with assaulting. Now that may sound a little bit odd to you, but the placement of some capture points are in areas where there is little, if any, natural cover. If that area is exposed, then it's actually an easier job to assault that point than it is to defend it. Well, it's a process that is developing, and we'll see how it ends up. I have a feeling we will see certain combinations go away and others be experimented with and eventually settled upon as a standard map configuration. Now, even as I say that, I realize that many War Thunder players are going to complain that they cannot possibly get to a particular capture point before the enemy team, and that places them at a disadvantage. Despite how difficult or at what type of disadvantage trying to hold that point may place them in, they'll ignore the fact that it may be much easier for their team to get annihilated holding that point than it is to assault that point. But you're not going to please everyone. There are people that just don't think on those levels, and that's fine too. They'll have a fair shot at being on the other team if they think it's so easy in possibly the very next match. And I think the key to fairness in that is to make sure that the spawning points for each team are random, and that one nationality, particularly referring to simulator or realistic battles, that one nationality doesn't always end up starting in the same spawn point on the map. That adds an element of fairness all the way around. Now in this particular match, we've done a pretty good job of defending that capture point, and I'm looking for a better angle of attack for the vehicles that are clustered near their spawn point. And I think I found it, although this is a much more exposed position. And they are already dropping artillery on me up here, so I'm going to have to move to an even less advantageous position that has less natural cover. The 105mm howitzer is an excellent weapon. It can easily destroy a vehicle if you're able to get the lower velocity shell that it fires on target. There's a lot of drop to that shell though, so sometimes that's not as easy as it sounds. It does seem to generate an inordinately high number of assists, where the shell hits and does massive amounts of damage to the crew but doesn't kill the tank. Which we just killed that one, that was a good shot. But it allows your teammates to easily get the kill because the crew is incapacitated in that vehicle that you've just hit. Either way, it's a game-winning gun, and I'm very, very pleased at how it's been implemented in-game. And I appreciate the fact that it takes getting used to this particular weapon to use it effectively. It doesn't have a high-velocity shell or a flat trajectory whenever you fire the weapon. It requires a little finesse. And sometimes you're able to drop shots in on your target in situations where other weapons can't. Anyway, at this point, I had to abandon my position temporarily on the other side. I was about to get torn up over there. So I'm going to make sure that our approaches to the cap zone are still safe, which they are. The forces down below and my compatriots up here on the ridge are doing an excellent job of controlling the battle zone. Just as a side note, one other thing that I appreciate about War Thunder's implementation of the M4 Sherman is the moan that the transmission makes whenever the vehicle moves. It sounds like a lost soul out there on the battlefield, and I rather like it. It makes the tanks very distinctive on sort of a subliminal level. While there is still room for improvement with the engine sounds and weaponry sounds that have been incorporated in-game, I think so far they have done an excellent job. Now I've worked my way around to a position that's a little bit more secure but still allows me to fire in the general direction of the enemy team's spawn point. I'm still a little bit more exposed up here than I would like to be, but it's easier for me to pull back. I just have to watch it at the exact moment of fire. Oh, there's an anti-aircraft vehicle. Anti-aircraft vehicles in particular are easy meat for the 105 howitzer. You don't have to hit them, just hit near them or under them to take them out. And against more robust vehicles, the 105 howitzer seems to be pretty good at taking out, if nothing else, the cannon barrels on vehicles as well, in addition to inflicting heavy damage to the crew. There's a KV-2 down there that I would love to be able to get a clean shot on, but unfortunately he beats me to the punch. He made a difficult shot with that big cannon on his vehicle, and I can't begrudge him that particular kill. I'm going to jump back into another vehicle, the M15 CGMC anti-aircraft platform. Which is a really interesting vehicle to drive around. I'll probably do a video on that in the near future. If you can keep it on its tracks, it can be effective in the right situations, but it's a very, very specific tool to be used for a very, very specific job. Suffice to say, we pretty much have this match wrapped up, and by the time I get back to the combat, it's all over. So that's it. If you haven't gotten to this particular vehicle yet in your training, it's definitely one that's worthwhile to go for. The M4A3 with the 105mm howitzer. It's a fun tank to play. It takes a little getting used to, but the results are very, very acceptable. And this also serves as a heads up to not assume what the map configuration is going to be anymore. We've been seeing a lot of changes lately, and I think there are more to come. Your quick assessment of the battlefield conditions and layout at the very start of a match could very well make the difference between winning and losing. That's it for now. Until I see you again, good hunting.